Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, April 10th, 2025. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Allan Debertin from St. Andrews, New Brunswick, talks about brewing with maple sap and using some low-tech brewing techniques to brew in chilly Canada. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing, and many thanks to everybody who's helping out in that way. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. Many thanks to the new Patreon subscribers who are signing up every week. Your help is very much appreciated. Financial supporters have already seen the video episode that I'm going to post to the public on Friday. It's the one where Steve Wilkes and I taste his chocolate cherry saffron mead. That was a delicious one, and at only 7% ABV. It's something you don't have to save for a special occasion. Although you could, if you wanted, of course. Financial supporters also got the recipe. Probably going to take next week off from posting the show, sort of a spring break, although I will be working. We've got a family project that needs a lot of attention right now, so I thought I'd take the opportunity to devote 100% of my time for that. I have all the ingredients for my next Mash Your Luck brews, except for one important component, the yeast. Our friends and sponsors at Imperial Yeast are releasing a series of 3 lager yeasts from 3 continents, and Bruce is going to send me all 3 at once. We've already seen L51 Never, the Canadian strain that's named in honor of our neighbors to the north. Never delivers smooth, well-rounded beers with a subtle malt foundation and a clean malt-forward finish. L55 Kanpai is a highly flocculent Japanese lager that's ready to bring crisp, bright, and ultra-smooth lagers to life. And there's a third on the way. It might have already been announced by the time that you're listening to this. I'm planning on brewing a moderate gravity lager featuring Canadian malt and maple syrup, not sap, with Never, and then use that yeast cake to brew a big, hoppy, cold triple IPA with UK ingredients that Matt and Josh and I formulated on the show to meet my challenge. I can't wait. You know we love Imperial Yeast with 200 billion cells in each easy-to-open package. My stir plate is usually dusty because I don't use it anymore to make starters for moderate gravity 5-gallon batches. And with ales, my airlocks are usually bubbling before bedtime. Ask your local homebrew shop about the new lager strains from Imperial and check them out at imperialyeast.com. That's imperialyeast.com. Okay, I've been hearing from our Canadian listeners more these days, and when Allan Debertin wrote me with a couple of show ideas, I thought it was a good opportunity to get him on the line. Now, about 3.5 minutes from now, you'll hear a little ding, an alert from my computer essentially telling me that there was a storm on the way. I've since learned how to turn that off. We got a lot of storms this past week across the country. Also, you'll hear the ukulele clip in the middle of the interview that used to signal a commercial, but it won't be a commercial. It'll be me reading an update from Allan about how his maple sap beer turned out. So let's talk to Allan. Allan Debertin, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Hi, James.
Well, it's nice to talk face-to-face with one of our neighbors to the north. Where are you at?
I'm in a lovely little town on the coast called St. Andrews, New Brunswick, just east of Maine. We're about 30 minutes from the border if you're driving over, and if you're crossing by sea, it's 5 minutes, at 20 knots.
Wow. So you can see Maine from your house.
Not from my house, but if I go up over the hill and I look down the hill, we can see Maine.
So given that that narrow distance, geographically, is there a big cultural difference, or is there a difference beer-wise? Let's just stick to beer. Is there a difference, between where you are and say that Maine or the United States in general, or are we all one big happy beer family nowadays?
I definitely would say a happy beer family. I don't think we're as quite into the hoppy, hazy IPAs, but we got a bunch up here as well. We have a brewery in town as well. It still is our post office, but in the back of the post office, we have a brewery, the St. Andrews Brewing Company. But the most popular style is really a mild. They call it the herringbone, since the fisheries around here. So more clean type beers are popular locally, but I definitely drink my fair share of IPAs, or I did. Now I'm more on the cleaner side of things. Our favorite, like when we go to Maine, I always get an Allagash White whenever I'm there. It's definitely my top beer.
Nice. Now, back when, about 20 years ago when I first started this podcast, I got the impression, or I was told at some point, that homebrewers up in Canada used to do the more kit and kilo kind of brewing because it was basically cheaper alcohol. and back then it was like they homebrewed, for more financial reasons than for, beer snob reasons or, craft beer reasons. I take it that if it was that way back then, it's not that way now.
I think there's a few holdouts perhaps that would prefer the kit, having cheaper beer kit, kind of Mr. Beer type stuff. But it kind of, to me, like personally, it emerged with craft beer. So when I was starting university, drinking age here is 19, by the way. When I started university, craft beer was just starting to emerge in Canada, at least locally in New Brunswick. So some of the first beers I was trying was Picaroons, which was a brewery up in Fredericton, for example. And with that, taste buds change and people wanted, a better tasting beer. And then by the time I started doing home brewing, which was when I moved to Guelph, Ontario, about 8, 9, 10 years ago, somewhere in there, I did start with a kit, but all the information on the internet was out there. The YouTube channels were there. You were obviously doing your radio show, your podcast. I would say we had a plethora of information to pick from. So and everyone was set up. We had whole grains available, all the brewing equipment available. So when I got into it, I quickly switched to all grain brewing and that sort of thing. So no, I think there's plenty of folks up here that will kit out to the max as well. I'm not one of them, as we'll get into a little later. But no, I think there's plenty of information out there that people can go to the 9th degree on what they want to do for complexity in home brewing.
Yeah, I think nowadays the information is out there. When we first started the show, when we did our first DVD, Steve and I didn't even know how to do all grain brewing. So we were like happy. We were fine. But and it was that fear factor, that ignorance factor of not knowing about something. And of course we got into more advanced techniques as time went on. And people have said, you shouldn't call your podcast Basic Brewing anymore because you talked about such advanced stuff. And my theory is, even advanced stuff is basic once you know how to do it. So that's
as soon as you teach someone or show someone how to do something, it's a lot easier for sure. And so with your podcast, and I would mention others, Beersmith and Brewing TV, that's kind of how I learned how to homebrew. Just looking at that stuff. So thank you. But,
I'll take some of the blame. No, I can't. It's thanks to everybody who's been on the show, who's taught me everything. I can't take too much credit. Before we get too much down the road, I have to confess that it's embarrassing how little I know about Canada. I'm sure that most Canadians could probably do better on, say, tests about, say, American geography than maybe most Americans. I feel like, but we tend to not know anything about Canada, unfortunately. Fortunately, I've been to a couple times to the western part of the country, up in British Columbia, and a little bit in Alberta. It's beautiful country up there, and super nice folks, and we loved it. So I can't wait to learn more. But I did get some information from listeners. Jason, for example, said, listen to the most recent Mash Your Luck episode where you wondered if RAR was Canadian. RAR, the company, is not. They were founded in Shakopee, if I remember my grain bags correctly. They do, however, have a good-sized malt house in my home and current town. They malt Canadian barley and employ Canadian staff, so I think that it would mostly qualify them for use in a Canadian beer. And he sent photos of giant grain elevators up there. He says, I know you've made it to Alberta before. I think I know the staff well enough I could swing a tour if and when you come back. That'll be fun. Jeff writes in, if you want to use Canadian hops for the starter beer, you can give Sasquatch a try. Yakima Valley Hops describes them thusly. Sasquatch is a wild hop variety that was discovered in the mountain region of British Columbia. It's grown exclusively by our Canadian sister company, Hops Connect, at two farms, Leamington, Ontario, and Chilliwack, British Columbia. Sasquatch is the first Canadian hop variety that is proprietary and patented. So that sounds fun. And here again, I was saying, that, because the Mash Your Luck category was UK, and I didn't know whether, Canadians would be offended to be, to say that they are part of or y'all are part of the UK. Niall writes in, says, we're still part of the Commonwealth, and the King is both King of the UK and separately the King of Canada. So I think your use of Canadian yeast and ingredients is an acceptable choice for your UK recipe. There are many great hop farms here across the country, from PEI to BC, and in fact, Yakima Valley Hops has several hop farms in Ontario and British Columbia. So I appreciate you all for writing in. And so does all that sound right, Alan?
It sure does. Yeah. I was going to mention that we grow hops in New Brunswick here, and is available at the homebrew level even here. And most of our barley would come from Alberta, and our wheat usually gets shipped by train to Thunder Bay, which is where my wife comes from originally, and then on large container vessels out through the Great Lakes. So across the world. Yeah.
Just the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald comes into mind immediately. And here's a stupid question for you. And
I love those.
And you're answering for an entire country. So, but Bob and Doug McKenzie from SCTV.
Yes.
Offensive or not?
No, it's fine. We love to make fun of ourselves, and I think that's important. I quite enjoy. I was thinking of all the movies that are in the, cross-border movies. Canadian Bacon comes to mind. Great movie. Americans come over, look into the city, and it's so clean here. And then I remembered, don't make fun of our beer, because bad things happen. You got to watch the movie again. Anyway.
Well, Strange Brew with Bob and Doug is of course a classic, and I have the DVD. And yeah, I just kind of that era of SCTV was when I was in high school, and so Bob and Doug started off because there was a Canadian broadcasting requirement that any programs produced in the country had to have at least a certain percentage time-wise of Canadian content. And so so that's what they did.
Yeah, that's right. CanCon, that's what it is. We have a whole thing across public broadcasters and broadcasters that are commercial as well. So anyway.
Be careful what you ask for. So we learned about back bacon and toques and all kinds of things. But let's talk about let's get back on topic because it's hard for me to not to be goofy sometimes. But you sent a couple of ideas, or you sent me an email with a couple of things. First of all, you're brewing a maple sap beer, or you have brewed a maple sap beer, and it's something that our friends Casey and Jen did several years ago. And I'm just curious about your experience in brewing with maple sap. Now, this is not maple syrup. This is the stuff that comes straight out of the tree, right?
That's right. This is the raw product, so to speak. So yeah, I was at a Christmas party and I was talking to a few friends, and they brought up making maple syrup, I guess, at the party. And of course, I wander in, few drinks in, and said, "Oh, I'd love to. Do you ever have any extra? I'd love to try brewing with maple sap. I've heard you can do it." They said, "Oh yeah, we always have way too much for our needs." So anyway, 2 weekends ago, my friend showed up at the door with 4 large jugs of maple sap water, which looks clear. Mm-hmm. And if you ever taste it, there actually isn't a lot of maple flavor taste. It tastes more like a mineral type water. And the one thing that they told me, which I didn't realize, is if it becomes cloudy, it's just the bacteria and whatever critters are already in there is already eating the maple sap. So I wanted to make sure I got the brew in before that happened, because I wanted to make sure all the sugars went to alcohol instead of for their own consumption needs. Obviously the boil would kill them off, but I was like, okay, well, that's good to know. So I ended up getting, so I'm going to use imperial units, because I'm weird that way, and a lot of Canadians are. We'll still measure our recipes in imperial units, like gallons and pounds instead of grams and liters. And I still think in temperature 2 ways, but I think a Gen Zer would probably just be metric. But I'm a millennial, so a late millennial, I'll say. And anyway, so we got 4.25 gallons of maple sap water, and I took a gravity reading of it, and it was 1011 or 1.011. So pretty good stuff. The internet, on average, you would probably get a 1008. So it was already a bit stronger maple syrup or maple sap water than what the internet was telling me.
Yeah, I think ours was 1.009, which, it surprised me at that time that it was that low in gravity. But I think you've got to boil maple sap down like by a factor of 40, or it's like 1 to 40 to get maple syrup. So there's not much sugar in there at all.
No, it's a big process. I think it can be 40. Some people say 20 to 1. Every 20 gallons you get 1 gallon of maple syrup. But I guess it really depends on your trees and how well the sap's running and the concentration in the sap water. I'm not a maple syrup expert, but I'll play one on radio, I guess.
And it might have to do with the grade of maple syrup as well.
That's right.
So
yeah.
Grade.
I really don't know much about it, to be honest.
As I understand it, grade A is lighter in color and maybe sugar content than grade B, which is darker. In that beer that we brewed with Casey and Jen, we added grade B maple syrup into the wort before we fermented. That way, we'd be guaranteed to get some maple character in there.
Right.
Did you do anything like that, or did you just go with straight?
I wanted to see. I just wanted to see what maple sap water tasted like on its own. I've had maple commercial craft brew maple beer before. You could tell was obviously had that artificial maple syrup flavoring added to it. So I didn't want that really. I just wanted to see what I would get just out of the maple sap water, similar to a sugar addition in a Belgian beer or a British beer, or what have you. So that's that's what I was going for, and just to see if it would work in general. So I didn't want to make it too complex of a recipe for what I was going for. So I guess I kind of hinted. I was thinking about, what would I want to do with a maple sap water beer? Would I want just a American kind of brown ale or a British beer? Because a lot of British styles add a sugar addition as well. But I like Belgian beers quite a bit, or that Belgian style type beer. So I ended up thinking, well, I'll just have a lighter beer because I got some heavier beers on tap right now, so I don't need another one of those. And I was thinking like a Abbey Belgian single style beer. But I wanted it brown because, maple syrup's brown. So, singles are pale usually. So I'm like, oh, well, it'll be a light double, I guess, instead. So I did a grain build that was more of a Belgian double style. So in the grain bill for that beer, I did 3.5 pounds of Maris Otter, 1 pound of Munich, 6 ounces of Special W. For color, I did 1 ounce of Carafa 3 and 3 ounces of pale chocolate malt for a little more roast flavor as well. And then just light hop additions, 1 ounce of Saaz for 60 minutes, and then 1 ounce of Saaz at flame out. So I boiled the beer for 60 minutes in total. The original gravity on that beer was 1044. And then it finished at a little higher than I expected. It finished at 10, 16, 17.
Oh, wow.
Somewhere in there. And then I was curious about that, so I did a bit more reading, and it could be that there's complex sugars in the maple sap water and the mineral content as well that might cause that density reading to be a little higher. So I packaged it yesterday. So it's not carbonated. I haven't really tried it, but I did try, the racking sample, so to speak, as you're racking from one vessel to the other, and it tasted great. It was dry, even though it was 1016, and it definitely kept that more mineral content in it. Maybe there was a little bit of mapleness to it. I'm not sure. It definitely had that Belgian phenol estery profile, but not too strong in it. And I just for here I'm about an hour away from any homebrew shop, so I generally order dry yeast packets just because it's easier for shipping. Mm-hmm. So I used a La Brew Abbey yeast packet for what ended up being 3.5 gallons in the end.
Well, it sounds delicious. It'd be interesting to see if you did a sort of a blind tasting and just gave it to unsuspecting friends and said, taste anything special in here?
I'll try that out. I usually just tell them what tap to choose, and then they pour a beer, and then they come back and they say, "What is this?" Sometimes I tell them ahead of time or warn them. I don't know if you'll like this one, but I want you to try it anyway.
It's what you want it to be.
Right.
You pick the style.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds delicious. Not a commercial. Don't skip. Although I know you never skip the commercials, right? Here's an update from Alan. The maple sap beer turned out great. He says the beer is very quaffable, perfect for when spring finally arrives in style. I would say the body of the beer is thin, and my perception of dryness led me to take another refractometer sample. Alan says the final gravity was 1006, with correcting for alcohol, not 1016, as I said on the show. Must have misread the hydrometer. Final ABV is 5%. Impressions of the beer: aroma has a hint of maple, or is that just esters from the Belgian yeast? Either way, pleasant on the nose. Taste: dry with little to no mouthfeel. Mineral taste: not unpleasant, something like a fancy spring water. Hints of bubble gum and plum. Nothing in taste for maple. If there is a hint of maple, it would have been in the aroma. Alan says overall, it'll make a great hot weather drink. I'll have to up the carbonation on the keg. The only thing I would change would be to add something like dextrin or melanoidin or honey malt to help with the perception mouthfeel. Let's get into how you brew, because the second topic. Sorry. Sorry. Bob and Doug.
No.
Bob and Doug there. The second topic is your philosophy of brewing gear or your techniques. You have. It sounds like you're not a Luddite because you do electric brewing, and you do, there are things that you've adapted to your style of brewing. But talk about your approach to home brewing, and especially your equipment style.
Yeah, well, I'll start with how I got into home brewing, which was, brewing on the stovetop. And that was, again, in Guelph. So my now wife and I were renting an apartment, and, brewing a 5-gallon batch of beer on the stovetop, it can take a long time to get the water at strike temperature and then boiling temperature, and then the vessel shaking on the stovetop because it's working so hard to try to get it up to speed. And you're like, I don't know if this is going to take off or not. But the other side effect of all that is the tropical rainforest that happens in your kitchen when you're, boiling for 60 minutes. So the first time we did this, we're literally wiping, the steam off the ceiling because we're in a rental and we don't want the ceiling paint to fall off or walls to come crashing down. That wouldn't be very good for, the rental costs or whatever. So
there goes your deposit.
That's the things. And so I said, there's got to be a better way. I can't keep doing this. This doesn't work. So I finally figured out when we moved, I didn't do too many batches that way. What our solution was at the time was to have our dehumidifier air conditioner going at the same time. So we're dehumidifying the room as we're brewing the beer. That seemed to stop the sweat effect, the rainforest. So anyway,
yeah. I also had to mop the ceiling. Last time I brewed inside, we don't have a vent hood over the stove. We have one of those dumb things that it is built into the stove.
Yeah.
So when you turn it on, it just sucks all the heat from the burner. It's really inefficient. But I looked up and there were actually condensation drops happening on the plaster ceiling, and I had to mop the ceiling with a towel. So all the windows fogged up, and Susan was very curious as to what was going on. So how did you adapt? What did you do?
Well, I bought induction cooktop, a portable one that you just plug in, because again, on the internet, so I don't know if it was your show or another, someone was talking about cooking with induction heat. So not quite sure of the physics of it all, but basically it vibrates it uses magnetic energy, and it vibrates the metal so that it heats up, and it's a more efficient way of heating as well. And the other thing it does is avoid scorching on the bottom of your vessel, because it's heating the whole vessel evenly. And then because you can plug it in anywhere, it's 120 volts, what I use, I can just run an extension cord and brew outside or brew in a sheltered area and not have that rainforest happen inside anymore. So that made me happy and my wife happy as well. So
it's another kind of electric brewing. You don't have the element inside the kettle, but it's right there on the outside.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm able to boil 5.5 batches. I wouldn't call it a vigorous boil, but it's a nice, gentle boil. I don't know from, you have the 240 volt, I think, but Steve has a 120 volt system. I'm not sure what vigor of boil is on Steve's, but I imagine probably pretty similar to mine.
I think
when he goes for it,
as long as it's vigorous enough to drive off DMS. I think that's the biggest thing. And it sounds like you've got plenty of ventilation to where it's not, where it gets you don't get you don't get corny beers. In other words.
No, I've never had a corny beer. I've definitely had some beers that I had to throw out, but that was mostly due to bad yeast, I would say, or me not making a starter. But I never got the corn effect, which is good. So,
and you get good hop utilization. So,
oh yeah, they're always bitter at the end. So I don't have a problem with balance and bittering and that sort of thing. As we get into it, often I find I need to reduce the amount of bittering hops because of I don't use any chilling either. So I find my beers turn out a bit more bitter than I think they will. So I always have to think, okay, I'll just hold back less than what the IBU calculator is telling me to add for bitterness.
Yeah, and, is it because it's cooler up there? Is that why you don't use a chiller?
Yeah, that's probably the main reason. I'm also cheap, and I don't want to run a ton of water. I don't really like wasting water either. So once I heard about, again, on these podcasts and radio shows and so on, the no chill method, I'm like, okay, this doesn't really matter. And then the folks at Brewosophy, I'm sure, have done a comparison between chill and no chill, and then the end result's usually not significant with those guys. Sometimes it is, but it's like, okay, this probably doesn't matter a heck of a lot, and the beer tastes good, so we'll just roll with it, So, but yeah, it being in a colder climate, especially in the winter time, it cools down much faster, I would say, than 80 Fahrenheit to 100 Fahrenheit days where you're at.
In the summertime, our tap water gets to be 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So, yeah, it's hard to chill down to 68 degrees when your water is 80 degrees. That's where recirculating with the immersion pond pump, recirculating the ice water through helps out a lot.
Yeah. So,
but on the opposite side of things, it seems like it could get too cold up there for your brewing, right? Or there's advantages in that you can chill your wort down faster, but there are disadvantages in that being too cold is also not good.
Yeah. So in my basement, it gets quite cold even in the summer. My basement stays around 15 centigrade. I don't know what the conversion is in Fahrenheit right now.
Well, 10 is 50. So it's about 60 degrees Fahrenheit is about 15, according to my little chart there that I've got on the wall.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So yeah, about, below, some ale style temperatures for the yeast, so if I want to do like a Belgian beer, for example, I ran into this challenge with the maple sap water beer. If I'm using a Belgian yeast, it wants to brew at, let's say 70 Fahrenheit or above 18.5 degrees Celsius. So, it would be a very slow beer, and I wouldn't get that ester phenol profile from that yeast. So what do I do? So what I came up with was we're also gardeners, so we have seedling heating mats for starting seeds, and it works quite well for sprouting the seed. So I thought, okay, what if I wrapped my carboy with a large seedling mat? It'll slowly heat up the carboy. And we don't want it to overheat because, that's not good either. You don't want your yeast to have too high of a temperature because you get some funky stuff happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I added a temperature controller, one of those Inkbird temperature controllers that you can program. And I have a glass carboy right now, and I just drilled a hole through the rubber stopper to put the temperature probe down to touch the liquid. And then sanitize as best as you can, and then wrap your heating mat, and you can set your temperature to where you want it. So I can rise or lower my temperature at will because my basement's still cold. So
Oh, nice.
it's quite nice for any ale style beers. And then, in the winter I brew lagers because that's what you do, as one does with a lovely cold basement.
Yeah,
So,
that's a luxury for loggers. Yeah, that's a good. I mean, we hardly ever have the problem of things being too cold here in Arkansas. Although it has gotten down to like 20 degrees below zero Fahrenheit, which I think might be the same. It's around the same Celsius, so it's cold.
yeah, it is.
It's cold either way.
That's right. Yeah.
But luckily, I have I ferment inside and not in my garage, so it's not a problem there. But where do you keep your beer? How do you serve your beer?
So I used to do bottling back in the day, but bottling is a pain, as you know. You got lots of cleaning and not the capping and so on. So friends of ours had a kegerator available. So a wedding gift to us was their kegerator that they weren't using. So it came with one tap and a keg, and that was perfect, and I loved it. So I did some upgrades, and now I have 3 taps on that old refrigerator.
Yeah.
And I have it in my garage, which is convenient because it's off of my back deck, and I can just open the door and go through and grab a beer and sit on the deck. But it's inconvenient for, Canadian winter. So the garage will go down. We get minus 20 sometimes here in St. Andrews. And I've had the unfortunate walk out to the garage on a Friday night to grab a beer, and nothing's happening.
Oh, no.
You pull the tap, and it's like, oh, no, I know what happened. It's frozen. So I said, well, there must be something I can do. I'm like, well, our refrigerator is a well-insulated machine. Let's try these heating mats again. So I stuck 2 of these seedling heating mats in, stuck a temperature controller just through the door. I didn't do anything too fancy, like drill holes or anything. I just put it through the door, and you can get those safety clips that you use for kids to keep them out of the fridge or our freezer.
Sure.
To keep the door shut as much as you can. And that keeps the fridge at a nice, happy temperature of 3 degrees throughout the winter.
Wow. 3 degrees
Celsius.
Okay, so that's for us. That's it's below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's a nice, cool, crisp, refreshing temperature. Yeah, I think I believe, who was it? Was it Mark Smith, who now is owner of, or part owner at least, of a Natural State Brewing Company. And remember, he had a fermenting setup in a refrigerator where it had a dual temperature control, and so he had the obviously, if it got too warm, it would turn on the refrigerator. If it got too cold, he had an incandescent light bulb in there, and that raised the temperature up to where he needed. I don't know that that would be enough to fight 20 degrees below zero.
Maybe a lot of people I know a few people that have chickens, and they use incandescent light bulbs to keep the chickens happy over the winter time. So in a smaller room type thing. So my worry would be with an incandescent light bulb is breaking it. I'm really good at breaking glass.
Oh,
so
yeah. Well, you be careful with that glass, carboy.
It's already chipped. It's been chipped for 8 years now at the very top. And I did break another one just recently.
Oof.
I'm not good with glass. And I definitely recommend anyone coming into the hobby to avoid it if possible.
Yeah. Plastic. They have good plastic fermenters out there nowadays. So used to, back when I first started homebrewing, brewing in plastic was frowned upon because, plastic scratches and, allegedly, spoilage organisms can hide in the cracks and it's hard to, or the scratches, and it's hard to clean them and all that. But they've got good plastic stuff out there now. So it's a lot lighter and safer as well.
Yeah. I definitely, once I break this one,
Oh,
I'm definitely going to switch out. It's it's a pain to carry those things around, and even lifting it up onto a desktop. Is it this the time I drop it?
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, I get Susan to help me now. I'm old, Alan. I'm old. I have to have Susan help me take it upstairs sometimes if I have to ferment up here in the kegerator in the studio. Discretion is what is it? Discretion's the better part of valor, or what's the saying?
I think that's right. Yeah, that sounds right to me. Yeah.
So basically, it sounds like your whole thing is low tech. You aren't tempted by the shiny objects. It does sound like the higher tech, the next big thing. It sounds like you. I'm sort of similar in that I tend to not want to go fancy if I don't have to.
Yeah. So I mean, I've looked into them because they do look intriguing to buy a electric malt brew system and that sort of thing, but it comes down to the price point in the end. So I can buy induction heater, and I looked up the price these days. It's $80 US, 115 Canadian. I mean, that's fairly reasonable compared to, I looked at that's available to me here, Grainfather type systems available here, and those are starting at $1,200 Canadian. Yeah. So if you're getting into the hobby, that's a high price point to start off with. So and it works. Like I don't tend to make 5-gallon batches anymore. I like to brew more often and drink different styles. So with that induction cooktop, I tend to make a 3-gallon batch size, and that seems to be fast. I get my strike water up to temperature quickly and boiling temperature quickly, so the brew day's very quick at the end of the day. So with that price point, and I already had a kettle that I was using anyway, so I didn't want to buy any other equipment that wasn't necessary, I guess, in my opinion.
Now, with the induction cooktop, there's certain metals that don't work, right? Yeah. So there's certain. That's right. So you have to make sure that the kettle you're using is magnetic, so you can attach a magnet to it to see if it works. And it's the alloy of the metal. So if it's not a metal that's ferric, I think is the right proper term. Sounds right.
It won't work. And I just happen to have a kettle that was that works with induction. So if you're buying a kettle, or if you're getting into the hobby, you definitely want to check with your homebrew shop or whoever that it would work with an induction cooktops. I did notice too that you can get 240-volt commercial induction systems.
Oh.
So it's a bit surprising to me that those that do make commercial systems haven't tried to do or use induction rather than the heating element inside the kettle, for one, efficiency, because the induction is more efficient than using that heating element, and two, again, to avoid any potential of scorching with induction and burning of hands and things. So when I touch the side of the brew pot, it won't burn my hand off right away. And if I touch the surface of the cooktop, then it again, I wouldn't recommend it, but you're not gonna have 3rd-degree burns or anything. It will be hot, but it won't cause any too much distress, I'll say. So that's a nice safety element to it as well. But I'm curious about maybe one day switching. If I ever do, I probably won't bother again because I'm only doing these 3-gallon pots of beer. But if I'm doing a large batch, having a 240 volts available would be pretty nice. I think you would get up to speed pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Obviously, you'd have to do some wiring in your house. Uh,
yeah, that would be the one thing. Yeah, but if you have the cash, I guess.
well, I tried borrowing the socket for the clothes dryer when I first got an electric system. That was 240, and that didn't last long because somebody else wanted to use that socket for the clothes dryer when I was brewing, and we found a reasonable electrician. So now I have my own plug.
Yeah, yeah. For me, I'd have an issue too in the winter. Make the house very cold if I left the door slightly ajar
Oh,
going into the garage. From luckily, like I could do it maybe, but I probably won't. The dryer is just outside of the garage door, so I could swing it maybe in through, but I don't. What I typically do is I start my brew inside or the strike water inside in the basement and leave the kettle downstairs because again in the winter I don't want the temperature to go down or up too much, so I don't bother with temperature control or keep the heating element on. The one disadvantage with the induction cooktop I can't dial in a certain setting. I wish those cooktops had a dial or a range that you could increase the wattage up so much or down. So that's the one disadvantage. So I can't keep a particular temperature during the mash. But again, it hasn't really affected my brew, I don't think. I mean, maybe it does, but I just wait the 60 minutes after I get the 152 Fahrenheit, and it seems to turn out fine. And then I move it out to the garage and the induction cooktop as well. Actually, I have two induction cooktops because we moved houses, and I couldn't find the other one for months because it was locked away in a box somewhere, or I thought maybe I left it. I wasn't sure, so I bought another one on sale. So now I don't have to lug the induction cooktop, which is a pretty light thing actually. I don't have to move it from one place to the other anymore. So
it's
efficiency.
Yeah, it seems like a good strategy. I forgot that I didn't have that other thing that now I have two.
So, and if one breaks, then I have a backup too. You never want to have a broken system like I heard you did a few months ago there.
Oh yeah, that was my fault. Keep up your maintenance on your stuff is my lesson from that. I had a little control cable break, and I knew for months that I should either replace it or fix it or but I was getting away with it, and then I didn't. So my fault. So what's your next brew? What's next on the agenda?
Well, I guess I kind of already did it. I did make a Belgian double on top of the yeast cake that was the maple sap beer.
Nice.
So I just upped the grain profile and did that. So I'm kind of like stocked right now. I have my Bock in the keg right now. Not your Bock, but mine. I have a Rauch beer. I have less of it. Because actually because I was worried about keeping that maple sap water cold, I put the cube of maple sap water on top of the keg that had the Rauch beer in it, and I had a little leak, shall we say, from the top of the keg. So it wasn't quite a brewing disaster show writable, but there was a bit of a puddle out on the garage floor, which is yet another smoky puddle. It wasn't steaming or anything, but it was there. So I had a bit of a mess to clean up, which is fine. Didn't take too long, and I didn't have to worry about floor damage or anything because it's on concrete.
Yeah, so there you go. Yeah.
And then I did a cold IPA recently as well. It's just in a keg. That one's neat. So that's you brew a lager style beer, a pilsner style beer, and then put in West Coast hops. So I don't know. It sounds pretty tasty. So a crisp West Coast IPA style. I don't go crazy with the hops. I never find I have as much success with IPAs as commercial examples. So I tend to stay away from that style. Plus, everyone does them. So I find they're just all delicious anyway, and I can't match it. I don't do any chemical additions to the homebrew either. So I think that's probably part of the secret to commercial examples. I'm not sure, or maybe I'm still too cheap on dry hopping and that kind of thing. I'm not still not sure on that either. So I tend to go for not that style. I like pale ales, I guess, instead. So it's not a cold IPA, just a cold PA.
Well, you stick with what you like and what you know. That's because, like you said, there's plenty of commercial examples of everything nowadays, it seems like. Well, Alan, this has been fun. It's kind of get to know a Canadian.
Yeah, come up anytime. We're a tourist town. We have whale watching in July, nice. August, and September. So look us up, St. Andrews. Love to have you.
Yeah, it sounds great. We need to visit the east part of the country because we've hit the west. Now we need to hit the east. So I appreciate your taking. I appreciate your writing in. I appreciate you said you've been listening for a long time. So I appreciate your sticking with us for so long. And thanks for hanging in up there.
All right. Thanks, James.
Many thanks to Alan. I know there are some Canadians who aren't super nice people, but I haven't met them. I appreciate Alan taking time out to talk to us. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com. Remember, I'm probably taking next week off, so don't panic. Or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. Please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. So until next time, until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer, production help for Basic Brewing Radio, and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. Talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well and stay tuned. So long.